Last time on Low Budget Binge.
It's Thanksgiving and the family is preparing to gather for a turkey dinner with all the fixins. They find a secluded area and settle in. I wish this film were as epic as the poster suggests, but no. No, it's not. Not at all. Nope. Of course, filling scenes with mannequins and making live people wear emotionless masks is always going to be the stuff of nightmares. She has a wonderful personality and is able to kick ass like the best of them when the chips are down and she needs to fight for her man. But no. No, it's not. Not at all. Nope. But they are still homicidal maniacs. The message is the meaning and the meaning is the message. But no. No, it's not. Not at all. Nope. Worst Thanksgiving ever.
And now, the next death-defying chapter of Low Budget Binge.
Welcome back to ML Miller Frights, a part of the Kings of Horror Network. I'm ML Miller. While you might be watching this video on the Kings of Horror Network, I urge you to click over to my ML Miller Frights page and give it a like, share with your buddies across the electronic superhighway, click subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to ring that bell for notifications. Please get the word out to new folks so we can make the Kings of Horror Network, as well as ML Miller Frights, bigger and better. Be on the lookout for a new Kickstarter campaign for an anthology I participated in called Nightmare Theater. This is a collection of short horror stories made by a whole gaggle of talented souls. The project is being helmed by David Schrader and Clay Adams. I paired up with my pirouette artist extraordinaire Carlos Granda for a morbidly fun morality tale to filmgoers who dare break the rules of common courtesy in the wrong theater. If you're interested in fun, scary, and gory horror, please support the Nightmare Theater Kickstarter campaign. Look below for the link. Low Budget Binge is where we venture down the paths less traveled and look at low budget, no budget, do-it-yourselves, and sometimes international films that never get that top billing you see in the usual Hollywood releases. I'll indicate in the review and down below where you can find these films, along with their trailers. Because of the large amount of horror films released in the month of October, I gotta catch up on some of these, so you get an extra low-budget binge this week. Here we go. The Redwood Massacre: Annihilation was directed and written by David Ryan Keith. It was released from Uncorked Entertainment on demand and digital download. When a mysterious stranger named Max, played by Damien Puckler, shows up with a mask and knife very similar to the one used in a mass killing 6 years ago, he convinces the surviving family of one of the burlap-sacked killer's victims, Tom, played by John Campling, and his daughter, Laura, the one and only Danielle Harris, to continue the search. With a gun nut named Gus, played by Gary Casper, in tow, the group search a deserted military facility, looking for answers and maybe some retribution. The original Redwood Massacre was a pretty run-of-the-mill slasher flick. It had a masked madman stalking and killing a group of very annoying kids on a camping trip that dared come near to a farm where a massacre occurred years before. Instead of repeating that formula, this sequel does what most sequels don't and tries to build off of what occurred before. It focuses on the survivors and their desire for some kind of resolution to their grief by capturing and killing the killer. I kind of wish Friday the 13th would have gone down that route, but instead they chose to wash, rinse, and repeat. Though Annihilation isn't a great film, I gotta commend it for trying something different. The Redwood Massacre: Annihilation highlights Danielle Harris's spunk and talent. I'm glad she stuck to horror, but she really is better than most of the movies she stars in. By far, she's the best actor of this bunch. Coming in second is the extremely likable, yet psycho performance of the lovable, gun-toting Gus, played by Gary Casper. This guy's a monster, and still manages to show a lot of heart in a very small role. I didn't dislike the Redwood Massacre: Annihilation. I think it's great that the filmmaker decided to make the story in a different direction, yet continue the story he told in the 2014 film. The film offers up some decent gore as the burlap sack-headed killer rips and tears through all of those in his path. There are some storytelling blips here and there, but the film turned out to be an above-average stalk and slash fest that will definitely pique the interests of slasher fans. Plus, any performance from Danielle Harris is worth a watch. The Cleansing Hour is streaming exclusively on Shudder. It's directed by Damien Levesque and written by Damien Levesque and Aaron Horowitz. Ryan Guzman plays Max, a fake priest and host of a YouTube show called The Cleansing Hour, which uses special effects, actors, and high production to sell the reality of exorcisms to its wide viewership. The viewers believe all the theatrics are real, but it's all a sham. When a real demon inhabits the girlfriend of the show's producer, Drew, played by Kyle Gallner, Max must use all of the knowledge from his fake exorcisms to conduct a real one while streaming live to his fans. As the possessed woman, Lane, played by Alex Angelis, writhes and spits in her chair, Max must confront his own sins with the world watching. Making a possession flick is tough. Comparisons to The Exorcist are always going to be there, and no matter what a film does or how innovative the film tries to be, it always ends up being about a lot of bodily fluids, a bound girl in a chair or bed, and a priest screaming at her. All of that is in The Cleansing, and while the effects are pretty strong, it's still nothing we haven't seen before. There are a few dodgy CG demon creatures here and there, but the practical stuff is nice and gruesome. What The Cleansing Hour does offer is a look behind the scenes at the YouTube show, which, if I'm being honest, isn't that interesting. Watching viewer numbers rise and fall and watching people like a video isn't what I call nail-biting cinema, and much of the film is dedicated to the analytics of the channel Max stars in. Maybe if you're into YouTube culture, this might appeal to you. The popularity of the show is shown to be an integral part to the plot, and also an interest of the demon possessing Lane. It just really isn't that compelling to watch as the film gets into the weeds with the behind-the-scenes lingo of YouTube specs. The Cleansing Hour is a slick and polished Hollywood-style shocker. It's decently acted. There are a few well-used dramatic themes that show that none of the people we are to be invested in are very nice people, and they sort of deserve the torment they're all going through. The fight between a screaming priest and a bound and snarling woman looks good, but it's nothing we haven't seen done more effectively in other films. While it doesn't offer anything new, what The Cleansing Hour does offer is a good-looking movie, just not a terrifically scary or original one. The Retreat is new on-demand and digital download from Uncorked Entertainment. It's directed and written by Bruce Wemple. From the director of Lake Artifact, a film I need to catch up with soon, comes The Retreat, a story of a pair of friends, Gus, played by Grant Schumacher, and Adam, played by Dylan Grunn, who go on a big hike before Adam gets married. The day before they head out, they stay at a bed and breakfast and hear tales of the Wendigo, an ancient monster in the woods that preys on man's greatest fears and drives him mad. Wouldn't you know it, when the two take acid in the middle of the forest, Gus begins seeing a Wendigo. The result is the destruction of a friendship, the sightings of horned monsters in the woods, and the shredding of one man's mind and soul. The Retreat is a solid indie, with some strong characterization in eerie moments. While the concept of the Wendigo has been explored in everything from Pet Sematary to Larry Fessenda's Wendigo to The Ritual to Wretch, The Retreat manages to give shape to this ambiguous monster in the woods by focusing on the madness it unleashes in its characters. Sure, you do get to see the monster, but the far more interesting stuff is the resentment Gus has for Adam getting married and how that festers and grows. As Gus loses his mind, the story doubles back on itself and retells itself in a different way. This makes for a film that you can't really trust. Did Gus and Adam make it out of the woods alive? Or did something truly horrifying occur? No easy answers are given, and I think those who like their horror buttoned up and tidy might take some exception to the open-ended way this one wraps up. I think the design of the Wendigo is nicely done. For the most part, it takes two forms. One of a large horned beast standing tall among the even taller trees, and another of a pale, bug-eyed humanoid monster that crawls on all four and leaps in your face. The former is quite imposing, as it simply stands and stares at the viewer with glowing eyes. Quite a creepy sight. But while the crawling monster is much more in your face and looks menacing from the distance, while it's moving, it's quite clear that the bug-eyed creature is just a mask with limited and rigid movements that make it even less effective the more we see it. The retreat makes for a great descent into madness film, as it really develops a couple of likable characters and puts them in a situation where the shedding of sanity is meticulous and somewhat believable. Grant Schumacher, who took on another cryptid in Monstrous last year, really delivers a likable, albeit dopey lead. The double and triple backing of the story doesn't help in making this one easy to follow, but those who like a more trippy and cerebral approach to diving into the madness pit will want to seek this one out. Daddy's Girl is new on-demand and digital download from Cleopatra Entertainment. It's directed by Julian Richards and written by Timothy Hill and Sean Hogan. John Stone, played by Costas Mandylor, is a monster of a man. He's a war vet, dismissed for torturing captives in Iraq. After his wife killed herself, John began having a relationship with his stepdaughter, Zoe, played by Gemma Dallander. On top of that, John and Zoe often go into town and lure women home for sex, only to lock them up in a dungeon and torture them to death. Confused and manipulated, Zoe contemplates suicide often. When a new girl named Jennifer, played by Britt McKillop, moseys into town and takes up a bartender gig in John and Zoe's hunting grounds, it's only a matter of time before she finds herself in John's sights as his next victim. While the plot is sleazy as all get out, I was genuinely surprised at how good this little slasher film really is. Yes, there are uncomfortable scenes of torture. There are some raunchy scenes of sex between John and Zoe. This is not a film that pulls punches when it comes to the sick shit that John does. But the film doesn't really linger on the torture and the sex. They're a huge part of why Joey's so messed up, but the film focuses on that mental anguish Zoe struggles with. She's been conditioned and feels hopeless that there's nothing else in life but to serve John. This is a really nuanced film about brainwashing and the pain it causes the victim who knows wrong from right, but just can't muster up the will to act on that distinction. A lot of that nuance and depth of character comes from the acting in Daddy's Girl. Dallander is a hell of a fine actress. She's put through an emotional ringer here. We see glimmers of hope shine through when she meets Jennifer and moments of utter desperation as she ponders suicide. It's a well-made character piece examining Zoe's complex character, and that's not really what I expected going into this one. Adding to the effectiveness is Costas Mandylor, who delivers one of his best ever performances as the sadistic John. John has a set of rules and a methodology he follows. In his own sick way, he loves Zoe, at least as much as a person like John can. Mandylor not only gives a menacing physical presence, but the cold callousness of his character really resonates. One problem I had with Daddy's Girl is that there are about 3 actresses in lead roles that look extremely similar to one another. While all of them serve different roles, there is that momentary reaction that I couldn't tell Zoe, played by Dallander, Jennifer, played by McKillop, and another character, Danny, played by Diana Kerr, apart. It would have served this film better had they gone with actresses that looked a little different from one another. If you balk at torture, rape, and other heinous acts, and who doesn't, you might want to give Daddy's Girl a pass. It has all of that depravity in spades, but it's not the focus as with other exploitative horror films. Most of the time, we only see the aftermath of the horror, or the beginning of it. But I think if you do give Daddy's Girl a chance, you'll realize it is elevated sleaze and a psychologically potent story with some surprisingly great performances. We wrap up this installment of Low Budget Binge with Chop Chop. It's new on-demand and digital download from Gravitas Ventures. Chop Chop is directed by Roni Patel, and it's written by Roni Patel and Andrew Erickson. Atala Arce plays Liv, a woman deeply in love with Chuck, played by Jake Taylor. While Chop Chop opens with what seems to be a pretty banal night at home with Chuck cooking dinner for Liv, it soon turns into the beginning of a series of horrifying and thrilling events that will change their lives forever. One word I could use to describe Chop Chop is unpredictable, and if you've seen as many movies as I have, it's a quality that I appreciate more than most. Chop Chop follows these 2 lovers down a dark and twisted path that gets darker and twisteder as it goes. I don't want to get into specifics. I will say that one scene seems to be on a mission to out-weird the next. Chop Chop is very derivative of some familiar films, specifically certain scenes of familiar films. Chop Chop reminds me most of Pulp Fiction, most notably the middle section of the film where things take a sideways perverted turn. In the 90s, there were a lot of films that did this. They would tell a typical crime story and then add a chapter which heightened the odd and nightmarish side of life you've typically never seen before and never really wanted to. Pulp Fiction did it, Boogie Nights did it, Rules of Attraction did it, and so did a ton of other films. But what Chop Chop does is make a movie that resides solely in that weird middle, surreal, Looney Tunes section and made a whole movie with that feel where one scenario leads to another that is one rung lower into Dante's Inferno. Just when you think things can't get weirder, they do. Chop Chop has some outstanding performances. First and foremost, Arcee and Taylor are great together, as a couple who have their issues but still love each other strongly. It's crucial to have an emotional anchor in this one-way roller coaster into the abyss, and they do a great job of always keeping the viewer grounded with their relationship. Other notable standouts is David Harper, who contorts his face and posture to make one of the skeezier creepers you're going to see in film this year. And Mikael Matson, who plays a pervy character that would be right at home with the McPoyle clan in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. While the film sort of ends on a whimper rather than a scream, Chop Chop is a descent into hell that you won't forget. There's no way you'll be able to call what happens next in Chop Chop, and while it might be reminiscent of other films, it still stands on its own with great performances, marvelous twists, and unsettling turns. That'll be it for today. Please chime in the comments and let me know what you think of this video, how on the nose or mind-numbingly wrong I am, or you can counter with your own review. If you like this video, please pound that thumbs up button. Share this video with your social media addicted pals. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on mlmillerwrites.com. Don't forget, I have 2 new horror comic book trade paperbacks you should look for. Grave Trancers is out right now, and Pirouette, collecting never-before-published issues, will be out in November 18th in only the finest of comic book stores. And be sure to subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for alerts to be the first to see my future videos. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your